Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. Yes, you know it's me. You know the voice by now. Hope everybody's having a great week. It is chilly here in Madeira Beach, Florida, although I have not turned on the heat in my place yet. It's not that cold, but it is a little chilly. Get up in the morning. You can definitely feel it. It's been a little windy. In fact, it's gotten to the point where my dad has said to me, you really do get cold down here. It does get cold down here. And I remind him, Dad, you could be up in Pennsylvania right now where it's 5 degrees. This is, if you're going to look at the continental, at least, United States, you are in the warmest part of it right now. Maybe L.A. could be a little warmer. Maybe. I haven't checked the weather in L.A. recently. But if you're in Florida in January and you're not up in the Panhandle down here in the part that sticks out into the Atlantic Ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, that's about as warm as it's going to get in the continental United States this time of the year. So, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, to use a horrible cliche. This is pretty good. All I have to do is check the news and you'll see. So it's kind of funny. My parents are here. They're going to be here till the end of March, and I've assured them that come February, it's going to be warmer. Come March, it's even going to be warmer than that, and they're going to like it just fine. So there's that. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com, and you can follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. A couple more things before I get started in the show. I was watching Jeopardy with my parents. They're big fans of Jeopardy. And there was a final question yesterday. And the answer, the topic was state capitals. And would you believe that the final question was about as easy a final question that you're going to get in Jeopardy? And most of the Jeopardy questions, especially Final Jeopardy, those $2,000 questions, they're decently difficult. Could not have been an easier last question. In fact, my dad and I said the answer in about 3 seconds. None of the contestants got it, and they lost all their money. In fact, I saw on FoxNews.com today that they are calling them the 3 dumbest Jeopardy contestants ever. And I have a hard time arguing with that. My dad and I were stunned. Just took for granted, okay, well, they're all going to get this. This is just obvious. And it had to do with Bill Clinton in the presidential library. And right away, it was state capital of Arkansas. It's Little Rock. Did not get it. Unbelievable. And then in other news, I saw that Glenn Fry died. That's something that's going to be weird, I think, for maybe my generation and probably the couple generations ahead of me. As these icons die, famous musicians, and because it was probably in the 60s, starting in the 60s, I would say late 60s, where a lot of actors and musicians really started going global. With the advent of TV and then TV, reaching around the world. Yes, I know TV started really in the 50s, but 60s, late 60s, mass communication. And so these people, they're not just regional stars. They weren't just regional stars, but they were worldwide stars, celebrities. And so they were known by more people than anybody before them. And now with the internet, where everybody can find news, news is essentially free. Not in economic terms, you know what I mean. But everybody has to pay for their internet service. But you can access news anywhere. And you can continue to read it, consume it, without paying any additional money. So these, like David Bowie, who died last week, and now Glenn Fry from the Eagles, and I'm not even that big of an Eagles fan, But they were in an era where celebrity went worldwide on one hand, and now they're dying at a time when news is all over the world, and news is instantaneous. And probably news is overdone with our 24/7 news cycle. And it'll be interesting to see as these people die who are known as the Rolling Stones get older, and members of Led Zeppelin and The Who, and actors and actresses from that time die. It's going to be interesting. And I've thought about that for all of the musicians that I've liked and actors who I've followed in movies, that when they die, it certainly does make you feel a little old, maybe. Probably. So it just seems like we have this rash of this episode of death recently. Alan Rickman, David Bowie, Glenn Frey, Renee Angelil, is that how you pronounce his name? Celine Dion's husband, and then I saw 2 days later her brother died, so it's just horrible for her. Just an interesting culture phenomenon. Just interesting. So let's get to the show. As I'm recording this show, the announcement has not been made yet, but there is a rumor out there that Sarah Palin will be endorsing Donald Trump, will be appearing with him in Iowa today, tomorrow. Granted, it's just a rumor, but there are geeks out there, can I say that in a nice way, who are following flights from Alaska to Iowa, because you can do that on websites such as FlightAware. And the rumor is there have been a few private planes that have left Alaska and are headed for where Donald Trump is. And the thinking is that Sarah Palin is on one of them. I can't say that I'm too pleased about this, but I'm not as displeased as you might think. And as you know me as a person who doesn't support Donald Trump, does not like him as a politician or as a guy. This seems to me, and I was telling a friend of mine earlier today about this, this smells to me like a little bit of desperation. Now, I'm going to talk about Sarah Palin herself here in a moment, but to have to go to her, and she has expressed support for Donald Trump since last summer, so this maybe really isn't a surprise, but that Donald Trump feels and his people feel that he has to pull her out so early in the nomination process, in this process, that he can't win the first state on his own tells me something. It smells of a bit of desperation on his part. Especially from a guy who seems to think that all he needs is himself to get people to the polls. Is this not in having to call her up, and maybe she called him, who knows, or he accepted her appearance, her offer to appear, whatever the case may be, doesn't this kind of feel like a little bit of a crack in his armor? Now, I know what this is going to set up, and I can't believe this hasn't been mentioned. Is this possibly setting up Sarah Palin being vice president nominee again? If Donald Trump gets the nomination, is this not kind of setting that up? You got to believe so. You have to believe it. So how's Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, and the others going to handle this? As you know, I've spoken very well about Sarah Palin. I've been a fan of hers since she appeared on the scene in 2008. Probably one of the best choices that John McCain ever made in his political career was picking her as his vice presidential running mate. Who knows where he would have ended up had he not picked her. But this isn't 2008 anymore. And Sarah Palin isn't the same person anymore. I don't know if her support and her words go as far as they used to. I don't know. And we do know that in the past election cycles, she has endorsed people who haven't won. She's not magic. And nobody, and for the record, nobody is magic. There is no person out there that can show up somewhere and automatically push a candidate over the top. But what upsets me about this is that this feels like two different issues going on here. One, is this just reality TV show stars sticking together? Because Sarah Palin has done more of that than anything else since 2008. Yes, she went back to being governor of Alaska, and then she resigned. She quit, and I give her all the credit for that because she decided she couldn't do the work of Alaska while all these people were filing lawsuits against her. I have no problem with that. We should have more politicians that quit. But since then, she's done all these different TV shows. Her daughter was on Dancing with the Stars. She's become more of that world. She's become closer to the Kardashians, dare I say it, than a political leader, a real political leader, a person who drives conservative conversation in the United States. Sarah Palin doesn't do that anymore. She shows up, people like her, but it's really, she's still working off of what she earned back then, 6 years ago, 8 years ago. She comes up, she has dishes out some funny lines. She makes laughs. She has her shtick down to a science now. It's really funny watching her now compared to who she was back in 2008. It's like a totally different person. So she has this, she's taken on a life of her own. Her own, being that I just talked about some rock and roll stars. They're different on stage than they're off stage. What it seems to be now that Sarah Palin is mastering that. I'm not saying she's not conservative or anything else, but I think there are definitely like two different Sarah Palins now. There's the one that's out in front of the cameras on the reality shows, and then there's the one behind the scenes. But this feels to me like first reality TV shows stars sticking together. Donald Trump from The Apprentice and Sarah Palin from the shows that she has done. And I guess what you could learn from this, because Donald Trump is not conservative, and Sarah Palin and he probably at their core have very different values. And that's the other part that is upsetting. And I guess, there's the saying, blood is thicker than water? I guess we're finding out that reality show connections are stronger than conservative connections. Is that not what we're seeing here? Has she spoken badly about Ted Cruz? Let's put it this way. Has Ted Cruz, for example, being that he is the front runner in Iowa right now, what has he done that would cause Sarah Palin not to support him? I don't even know if he needs her support or not. I'm just asking the theoretical question, rhetorical question. What has he done that would cause her to be turned off? Is it because some people think he's fake? I don't know. Because they surely have more in common than she has with Donald Trump. And, it's weird to me. that you could think of Sarah Palin, Laura Ingraham, Ann Coulter, three women, three prominent conservative women leaders of the past 6 years, and of course Laura Ingraham and Ann Coulter go back several years, that have completely lost their minds over Donald Trump. And I'm just going to ask something. I know I'm not supposed to go here to this area in this sort of show. But do you think that there's more going on to it than politics? Do you think that maybe these three women somehow are attracted to him? Can I say that? Because it's so weird. I don't know how else to think about it, because it's so obvious to me as just a regular guy out here that Donald Trump, it's obvious to me that these three women should be smart enough to see that Donald Trump is full of it. And in my personal life, when I've seen this going on, of course this is outside of politics, when I have seen women defend some idiot or something like that, I automatically think to myself, there's something else going on here. And there may be a kind of attraction going on there. And dare I say it, sexual attraction. Could it be? I'm not saying that Donald Trump's cheating on his wife. I'm not saying anything like that. Hey, men do the same thing. I'm sure that there are men who have gotten caught up with an attractive woman who's running for an office and only voted for because of the way she looked. I'm sure that goes on too. I'm not saying this isn't a two-way street. It is. But in this specific circumstance, these are three women who've totally thrown their conservative values to the side for this guy. And when I think of something like that, I think of an irrational, when I think of irrational behavior, I think of something having to do with sexual attraction. I'm just going to say it. You know. And it is a little bit disgusting, and I think it undermines them. But I hope that conservatives out there who don't like Donald Trump and are dismayed by what Sarah Palin's going to do, I hope that they don't become dejected because of all of this. Because, like I said, you have to look at why is this happening? Why? Because Trump wants to win. Yeah, but this is the guy who has pretty much said that he doesn't need anybody to win. He just needs his supporters to show up and vote, and they're going to do it despite him not having a ground game, and suddenly he pulls Sarah Palin in. And I'll say it again, I'm not sure that Sarah Palin's words go as far as they used to, especially, it's not like the rest of the candidates are a bunch of Jeb Bushes or a bunch of squishy rhinos, Mitt Romney, guys like that. They're not. And in fact, the leader in Iowa is the exact opposite of that. But could she be setting herself, I'm just wondering, could she be setting herself up for a vice presidential slot? Is she ready to get back into the mix? I have to think that there might be something else going on here as well. Dare I say it, regarding Sarah Palin and why she's going along with Trump and getting involved in this at all. There's a part of me that maybe thinks that Ted Cruz, if he gets the nomination and wins, he becomes the leader of conservatism in the United States. No matter what else you may think about him, he's going to become that. And there could be some conservatives out there who don't like that. And because it's much easier to be on the outside and criticize, for example, Barack Obama or the House or the Senate when it's not going a conservative direction. But a lot of these people, I've told you, there would be nothing better for me on this show, for me to show up every day and say, you know what? The world is awesome. I would love to do that. I'm not so sure that other people, though, think like I do. I think that there are people out there that want to see the discord out there. They want to see the conflict because they love talking about it, and they need it. I personally don't need any of that stuff. But it certainly makes good for good talk shows. And what would happen if Ted Cruz becomes president and the United States does start going in a conservative direction? Could it be that a lot of people are going to be out of work in the complaining business? Could it be that what Sarah Palin has been doing for the past few years is just going to isn't going to go as far? Because there's no reason to hire her or some of these other people to talk badly about the way the country is going if the country is going in a good direction. That goes through my mind as well. Just throwing out some thoughts here. I know that immigration is allegedly Donald Trump's number one issue. Well, hey, Sarah Palin has to know his history as well as I do. If I know it, she knows it. The difference is, if I was in her position, I wouldn't come anywhere near him. But maybe she is. And like I said, as I'm doing the show, it hasn't happened yet. Just can't figure it out. I know that all the Trump supporters, to them, it makes total sense, but I know who those supporters are. Those people who suddenly think that they're Twitter experts who have 24 followers, and suddenly they're dishing out hundreds of messages a day. Once again, I've talked about it a few times. I think it's all astroturfed. I think these people are being paid to do it. Why would Sarah Palin want to get involved in any of that? I don't know. I don't know. It just seems to me that despite what people may say about Ted Cruz, that he seems to be running an honest campaign. I think that he's talking about these issues, and I think the other guys are talking about these issues in the ways that they believe. Although some of them aren't as conservative as others. But surely none of them have flip-flopped as many times as Donald Trump has. And I don't want Sarah Palin's career and what she's doing exactly to come to an end. I don't want that. I don't want her and her family to go down in flames or anything like that. And I've told you, I've supported her for several years now. But I think a lot of people would think this is too far. You know what? I get it. If this was the general election, even though I'm not a Donald Trump fan, and if he gets the Republican nomination and she wants to go out and do that, then that's something totally different. But in the nomination process, it goes back to what I said in 2012. Like it or not, a bunch of regular people voted for Mitt Romney, and that's how he got the nomination. It wasn't fixed. There wasn't ballot box stuffing. It wasn't anything that illegal that went on. A bunch of people just showed up in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Florida, Nevada, all the other states, and voted for Mitt Romney. Even though they had all these other choices, they still chose to vote for him. Something I can't figure out. In the general election, that's different. But when you have choices, it's hard for me to believe that all those people thought that Mitt Romney was their best choice. They kind of just went along with him because he was seen as the guy who was going to win anyway. Doesn't this feel like that? if Sarah Palin's going to latch on to Donald Trump for the next 6 months or 3 or 4, I guess say 3 or 4 months in the nomination process, why does she have to make a decision at all at this time? No. I don't know. Despite what she may say about immigration, despite what he may say about immigration, and them having that in common. Because I don't know how you can believe him. I keep saying that over and over. I don't know how you can believe him. And is she dirtying her brand by latching on to Donald Trump? I guess she would be if he doesn't get the nomination. I guess she would be if he does start losing in some of these places. And I should remember that there are a lot of people in the Republican Party who don't like her. They're turned on. There may even be some who like Donald Trump and dislike her and say, oh, she's going to support him. And so they'll say, no, I can't. If that's going to be the case, I can't support Donald Trump. I suppose there are a few people out there who think like that. So this isn't, for anybody who, if this does happen, I hope people don't think that this is the end of the world. It's not. If you're afraid that Donald Trump's going to get the nomination and Sarah Palin's going to push him over the top in Iowa, as Ted Cruz's people have already come out and said, this is a mistake. She's hurting her own brand by latching on to Donald Trump. They'll figure something out. It's just, she didn't need to make this decision, and I just wish that she was smarter. And I could say that for a bunch of conservatives who have chosen to hitch their wagon onto Donald Trump. It's a mistake. I'm going to keep saying it. I got a few minutes before the break. Didn't get to talk about the Democrat debate too much on yesterday's show. Hillary Clinton right about now has to be kicking herself in the butt that she didn't take Bernie Sanders more seriously. She's losing in Iowa and New Hampshire right now. She's just not that attractive a candidate. I know we as conservatives, we maybe want to believe it's because of Benghazi and, of course, the movie that's out there now, 13 Hours. We want to believe it's because of the email. It's not because of any of that. I don't know how many. I know some Democrats are dismayed by the email controversy. There's no doubt in my mind. I don't know how many are bothered by Benghazi, but I think there are a few out there who have been bothered by her stances regarding her email. But that's not it. She's just not that likable. She just doesn't run a good campaign, and all of the problems that have popped up in 2008 are popping up now. And I think maybe what we're learning is that maybe we overestimated Barack Obama's campaigning abilities in 2008. It could be that he looked so good back then. Now, granted, when it got to the general election, he got tons of votes. He got the most votes of any president ever. But that campaign, his campaign might have been made to look a lot better simply because Hillary Clinton was so bad. We overestimated her popularity, her abilities in 2008. And when Donald Trump, Obama started kicking her butt, we're like, oh, this guy must be the best guy ever. Best campaigner ever, best ever to run for president. And now we're figuring out, no, that's not the case, because even Bernie Sanders is beating her now. And I wouldn't say that Bernie Sanders is the political version of Ted Williams. He's just a guy, not that charismatic, 74 years old, been in the Senate forever, and he's beating her. Maybe this is just about Hillary Clinton herself and has nothing to do with any of her controversies. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
Red State Talk Radio. Lock it in and rip the knob off.
I know you're watching, so pay attention. You hate my freedom, my religion, and my country. You hate me for speaking my mind. You try to control me with violence and intimidation. You think you can muzzle me with fear? Don't ever confuse me for my politicians or my media. I am an American, free-born and free-bred, and I will call you out for who you are. An Islamic extremist who would kill me for my beliefs. You don't intimidate me. My freedom is more powerful than anything you can possibly do, and I will never, never surrender my rights to your terror. I will say what I think, worship according to my beliefs, and raise my children how I see fit, and I defend it all with the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. I cower to no one, because I am the National Rifle Association of America, and I am freedom's safest place.
This is Donna Fiducia. For 26 years, I was a member of the mainstream media, most recently as an anchor at the Fox News Channel. Ladies and gentlemen, the mainstream media has failed you miserably. Red State Talk Radio will not fail you. Tune into Red State Talk Radio at redstatetalkradio.com, the dominant force in conservative Internet talk radio.
I lost my brother Frank in the Battle of Iwo Jima.
He served on 4 combat tours.
In Vietnam,
In Iraq.
Afghanistan.
There's a life that was lost behind that pin.
I put it on for my wife,
For my husband,
My brother.
my dad.
My son.
We wear it because we honor those that we lost.
To learn more about the stories behind the Gold Star Pins, visit goldstarpins.org.
This is Jeff Carlisi from the Band 38 Special. You're listening to Red State Talk Radio. Lock it in and rip the knob off.
Back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. During the break, I had an opportunity to further peruse, and more people were talking about Sarah Palin and Donald Trump, if this is really going to happen. And it's interesting that they kind of agree with me that here we have a couple other candidates who are certainly more conservative than Donald Trump, who are out there running good campaigns, seemingly giving the Tea Party all that it wants, seemingly going along with what Sarah Palin has been talking about for years, and then she goes and maybe thinks about appearing with Donald Trump in Iowa. It's very difficult to understand. And this goes back to what I've talked about for months about how all of the conservative establishment media, you know who I mean. I mentioned some of them in the first part of the show. Laura Ingraham, Ann Coulter, and we could even go to Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, all of them that have been fascinated with Donald Trump and had said all these nice things about him. And the first time that it happened, I talked about it on this show and said that I can't believe I'm hearing what I'm hearing. But I've tried to tell you, they have things to sell, they need ratings, and Donald Trump gets ratings. I don't deny that at all. I know that from my Twitter feed. If I put something in my Twitter feed about Donald Trump, that tweet gets more attention than any other tweet. That's what tells me they continue to talk about this guy in glowing terms because it brings more listeners, more advertisements, stuff like that. It has nothing to do with conservatism, even though if it wasn't for conservatism, none of these people would have a job, period. They wouldn't even be known without conservatism in the United States. But they're willing to sell it out to sell gold and magic beds. And that's kind of how I feel about Sarah Palin now. She is one of them. If this happens, she is one of them. Selling out her conservatism for her own popularity. And I want you to know, as long as this show exists, I'm never going to do that. I want you to know that. Let's move on to something else. I talked about the Dem debate. I don't know what else I can really say more about the Democrat debate. I know that they argued over a few things, but I saw that the ratings for it, I think a rerun of something got higher ratings than the Democrat debate did. Is this a sign of, is this a foreshadowing of what's going to happen in November? I don't know. Is there a lack of energy on the Democrat side? I compared to probably 2008, yes. I think the answer is yes. I believe that no matter who the nominee is, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, whoever might jump in, maybe Joe Biden could still jump in, or Elizabeth Warren could still jump in if the Democrat higher-ups think that Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders is going to be a disaster. But none of them will get the amount of votes that Barack Obama did in 2008. I'm fairly sure of that. I can't see any one of them getting 69 million votes. Maybe they'll get as many, if they win, either any one of them wins, one of them will get as many electoral votes that he did as he did in 2008, 2012. I could see that. But the amount of the popular vote, individual persons, personal votes, I just don't see that happening. So yes, the energy will be down more compared to at least 2008. Now the problem is for the Democrats is if their motivation of your average Democrat is lesser than 2012. If it's less than 2012, then it's going to be a very, very tight race. I think it's pretty easy to see that. Because it seems to me that looking at the ratings for these debates, and I remind you that's the only reason they're held, is so these different channels can get ratings. I anticipate that even though I don't like Donald Trump, and I won't vote for him, I'm saying that again, that he's going to get quite a few votes if he gets the nomination, as is Ted Cruz or any of these guys will get quite a few votes, and it could make it fairly close. It's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a struggle for the Republican to win, and I think for the Democrats, it's going to be a struggle for them to get as many people to show up as they did in 2008 and 2012. And that, I think, makes for an interesting contest. I think it does. But Hillary Clinton, just not a very good campaigner. Even if she didn't have these controversies, I don't know how much better she would be doing. I don't know. And Bernie Sanders, this is kind of like that football game where you have the number one team. And what do the football pundits always say in something like that? The number one team is playing a team. A team is a huge underdog. Maybe the point spread's like 20 points. Broadcasters will say, well, that number one team, it needs to go out and needs to put this other team away early. It needs to put up about 3 touchdowns on him early, get up to like 21-0 to show this other team that it has no business being on the field. Hillary Clinton has been able to do that. She has allowed Bernie Sanders and his people to have a belief, just like a really good team not putting away a horrible team early. That all that does is give that bad team confidence. That, hey, we're on the field. We're within a touchdown. Yeah, we're not winning, but we're within a touchdown. Hey, we can play with these guys. That's the last thing that a good team wants a bad team to think. Hillary Clinton has given Bernie Sanders belief, his people belief, and now they have confidence, and I think they're in it for the long haul. The question will be for Bernie Sanders, does he have the courage to go for the jugular when it counts? And when I mean when it counts is after Iowa and New Hampshire, say they're close. Say each election was close, maybe 1-1-1, the other, Hillary won the other one, he won one, she wins the other one. Is he going to go on the attack because we know that Hillary Clinton will go on the attack? We'll just have to see. We'll see if Bernie Sanders really wants to have a fight with this because, like I said, nothing matters until they start counting votes. All of this is just pregame. This is just football in shorts. That's all it is. But when the votes start counting and everything starts counting, it's like the real regular season, then it's time to get really, really tough, and we'll see if Bernie Sanders wants to do that. And that's the same way on the Republican side. All of this has been pomp and circumstance. The tests haven't started. The games haven't started. No grades have been given out. This is just like the first day of class right now. Come Iowa, then we'll see. Then the battles start. And we'll see what happens. New York values. A couple different articles that I could cite. The reason that I wanted to talk about this today. Kevin Williamson has what I think is, I usually respect what Kevin Williamson has to say at National Review. I think that he missed the point. And then I listened to him on a podcast with Charles C.W. Cook at Ricochet.com. And once again, they talked about it back and forth for a long time. And it seemed like a straw man argument to me, propping up something that doesn't exist. And then I saw an article by Matt Lewis, a guy who I think usually does a good job, but I think he misses the point as well, regarding talking about New York values compared to values in the rest of the United States. And Matt Lewis is in his article. He says that this idea that's misplaced, that the country, the non-urban areas of the United States are any superior compared to the urban areas of the United States. And he brings up the agrarian economy, and he brings up Thomas Jefferson and some others who thought that the people out in the farmlands are superior to the people in the cities. And Matt Lewis says that, well, we should worry about that. You start talking about New York values because the fact is more and more people are living in the cities. And how as a party, how do you win if you feel comfortable making a point, making fun of the people in the cities? Well, I got to tell you, I've lived in an urban atmosphere since 1998. And I'm going to tell you, I like it. As a conservative, I like it. I love living in Las Vegas. In fact, I think it would be safe to say maybe before I leave this earth, somewhere down the road, I could actually see myself moving back there. I still have a lot of friends there. Lots of things to do. I don't like to gamble so much, but I do like to go to the race and sports book once in a while, lay some bets down, something you can't do here in Florida. You know, there's a lot of different reasons, although I love living here. But in the last 18 years, I've been in urban settings. But I know, for example, if I'm living in Las Vegas and a conservative would say something about Las Vegas like what Ted Cruz said about New York, I wouldn't be offended by that. As a Las Vegas resident, I would know what he meant, even though I think that Las Vegas is a great city. And I truly believe that. Even though it's Democrat and it has some things that maybe a lot of conservatives don't like strip clubs and gambling and a lot of drinking and everything. Things that I should tell you, I never took part in hardly any of it the whole 13 years that I lived there. But I would know what he meant, and I wouldn't be offended by it. The truth is, yeah, if the United States, all of it was Las Vegas, yeah, it would be a problem. It would be a problem. It would be. You'd have a lot more crime. You'd have a lot more prostitution. You'd have a lot more drugs. You'd have strip clubs on every corner. I'm not sure that that's the America that we want. I'm not sure about that. Even though I can say living there, I didn't mind it. But the whole country being that way, I don't know. Likewise, so if I'm thinking like that, and even if he would have said those Tampa values, meanwhile, I'm not even sure what Tampa values would mean. Tampa certainly doesn't have a distinct personality like Las Vegas or LA or New York, for example. Tampa is it's just where a bunch of people live and there's buildings. And it just happens to be on the water. I don't know if there's your really distinct, stereotypical Tampa person. So even living in the Tampa area, if Ted Cruz said those Tampa values and has said it in a condescending way, I wouldn't be offended by it either. So I have to think that this is all overblown because I'm thinking there are probably people who live in New York City that like it, like living in it, like taking the subway. But on the other hand, they know that, you know what, New York City has a lot of problems. And and if they're a Republican or a true Republican, true conservative, they know that yes, if New York values were the entire United States would have a big problem. You can live in New York City and not have New York values. And anybody who's smart knows that. So when these people, Matt Lewis, Charles C.W. Cook, Kevin Williamson, get mad at Ted Cruz for saying New York values, it's totally overblown because there's even New York people who are saying, yep, Ted Cruz is right. These New York values stink. It's not like every single person who lives in New York City and the rest of New York heard Ted Cruz say that and said, well, that offends me. That's the point you have to make about all this. On top of the fact that if Ted Cruz means that less crime happens in the small communities, the red counties in the United States, where there aren't New York values, then he's right. And I would remind Matt Lewis of that as well. For everything that matters in this country, the farm areas or the places out there, these small towns around the United States, are better than the metropolitan areas. And I say that as a guy who's lived in the metropolitan area for 18 years. There's less crime, there's less murder, there's less rape. Higher percentage of those people, their children are more likely to join the military. You're more likely to see American flags outside of homes. There's less regulation. People can do on their land pretty much what they want. There's less abortion. There's less divorce. People stay married. Right? People were more religious. They go to church more. They give to charity more. On and on and on. That sounds to me like important stuff. I didn't, even bring up anything about money. But just good old-fashioned American values, yes, The areas in this United States where there aren't big cities are better than the metropolitan areas in the United States. So I don't know what their point is in all this. I think what keeps popping up, and Kevin Williams said it in his article, and then said it on the podcast as well. There's this concern about, well, I don't know how you change people's minds if you're going to make fun of them. Nobody's ever gotten anywhere by making fun of people. Well, that's true, and I've talked about that. No business has ever stayed in business by making fun of its customers. I understand that. But I also know that those people who live in those areas, once again, going back to New York, understand what Ted Cruz means. The fact is, they'd live somewhere else if they could do it. But they're probably attached to that area, for example, New York, once again, due to their work, due to their family, due to where their kids are going to school. Things like that. Can't afford to pick up and move. That doesn't mean they like living there. And they are an expression of the values of the people. We know what New York values are at this point. We know that they voted for Bloomberg. We know they voted for de Blasio. That's how I know what New York values are. And that the other guy, the people who are running against them, didn't come close. That's what we know. Granted, I know, Mayor Giuliani, good guy. But you know what? Not conservative. Not conservative. Good guy. Thank God that he was the mayor of New York City when 9/11 happened. But not conservative. We as conservatives would not be pleased if he was president. Good on a couple issues. On all the other issues, not so much. And dare I remind you, Donald Trump comes from New York. We see what his values are. And I was reading a story, I forget where it was from, about, you know what his New York values are? He's never donated any money to any 9/11 foundation. That's what his New York values are. I was reading that. It was, unfortunately, I forget the site. So while he's putting up pictures, these are New York values and pictures of 9/11, he's the guy who hasn't even donated with all of his billions, allegedly, to any of these causes. So conservatives who are all mad at Ted Cruz for talking about having his New York values, people know, even the people who live there, know what Ted Cruz means. What Ted Cruz means. I don't know, I have a hard time saying that. By any value and character, if the issue is character, integrity, and values in the United States, then Ted Cruz is right about all of this. And the more that conservatives make this difference between the urban areas and everywhere else, I think conservatives can make a lot of inroads regarding this topic. Instead, we have conservatives who wish that Ted Cruz would just shut up about it. I don't get it. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. You can go to Amazon.com. Just do a search for Edward Dentzel. You'll find my books. Love for you to check them out. You can go to EdwardDentzel.com, where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. EdwardDentzel.com/book will allow you to download the first chapter of my next novel, The Comebacks. You can find my show on SoundCloud, Podbean, and YouTube. Also in the iTunes Store. You can also find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. It's been nice talking to you tonight. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.